Perfect. Well, as everyone's rolling in, thank you all for joining. We're really excited to have you. My name's Andrew. I'm on the boot camp team here. I know obviously you're not here to listen to me. You're here to learn a little bit more about medical school, but something that we're doing with Leland, I don't know if you guys have been to one of our boot camps before, but we are actually going to give one of the attendees tonight. There'll be a lucky winner to get free admission to our medical school application boot camp that we'll be hosting. So everyone pull out the QR, your phones, and scan the QR code on the screen and apply for a chance to win a free spot in the boot camp. And then you'll see as well that Amanda's going to drop it in the chat if that's easier for you. But yeah, we would love to have everyone apply so that way you can prepare a little bit more closely for med school. And we'll dive a little bit more into what this boot camp will actually have. So, it's gonna be in exactly like 3 weeks. We'll have a wide mix of, sessions and different forms of engagement, but just like how we're having this free webinar, the boot camp goes a lot deeper. There's gonna be a ton of sessions, but it'll be at the same time for every single session. If you can't make the sessions at 7 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Pacific, we'll send all the recordings as well, and you'll have access to that information forever. But a little breakdown of what that boot camp is going to look like in terms of the live webinars that we'll be hosting. Um, You'll be able to see that here. Okay, perfect. We'll have 6 live sessions that once again go through every aspect of kind of the application process, your personal statement, your essays, your supporting actors for those kind of recommendations, more workshops, and then preparing for the interview. So obviously this webinar is meant to kind of help prepare for an aspect of that, but this application boot camp will literally walk you from like start to finish. And then in addition to that, not only will we have live sessions just like the webinar we're having today, but there's going to be a lot of other course content materials available for everyone as well. Um, for example, you'll be able to have some training materials and some assignments as part of the boot camp. Perfect. There it is. You'll be able to have some interactive activities. You'll be able to work with different peers in your cohort for feedback and prep. All of it so that way you can, the culmination would be kind of that 45-minute mock interview you'll have with the top coach. Normally that alone can be pretty expensive. But in addition to that, we have other resources like the Q&A, other coaching discounts, and Leland Plus is our library of resources across all categories if you want to take advantage of that. So normally that would be obviously a couple grand, but you'll see here that there's going to be once again one lucky attendee that will win free admission to this, but everyone else tonight just for attending will be able to get admission into the boot camp for $600. And as you can see, it's a pretty big discount. And if you have questions about it, you'll be able to chat with me. So we'll announce the winner at the end, and then everyone else will get like a text or an email from me, and we'll be able to chat and ask any questions you may have about the boot camp. So again, uh, Amanda has it as the first message in the chat if you want to apply. And then if not, you can just type in your browser bit.ly at WinMedSchool. So if there's any questions, let me know. But from here, we'll turn it over to the man of the hour instead of me talking the boot camp. So thank you for your time.
All right. Can people hear me okay? Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Vaithish, and I will be talking to you about crafting your personal journey today. Great. I'll begin with a little bit of introduction about myself. I was born in Kansas and I went to school at Kansas State University, which was 10 minutes from my hometown. And after completing my bachelor's, I decided that I wanted to specialize in becoming a physician scientist and I wanted to get both my MD and PhD degrees. And it was that point where I decided to take a non-traditional path, mostly because I got a scholarship to do my PhD first. So I decided to do my PhD at the University of Cambridge. And after completing my PhD, I came back to the US to start my medical training at Stanford, where I am currently a second year medical student. So if you're thinking about doing MD PhDs or different ways of doing it, I would be very happy to speak to that. But in the past, I've coached students in a number of different capacities, be it interview prep or be it crafting their personal statement or helping students see through the whole journey or provide advice on school selection. These are some things I've helped with in the past. And if you want to work directly, here's a QR code that you can take advantage of. And if you want to just chat over a quick 15-minute free call, I'm available and just shoot me a text on Leland platform. All right. So here's the topic for today. So I will be talking about how to craft a good narrative, which raises the question, where do you get a chance to build a narrative in your med school application? I really think there are two areas where you have a real opportunity to tell a good story of who you are. And the first would be your personal statement, which forms the bulk of the narrative for why you want to become a medical doctor. And the second would be the image that you project during your med school traditional interviews, where you would also have an opportunity to share your story and tell more about why you would want to become a medical doctor and why it makes the most sense to pursue this particular career path compared to everything else that you could do with your time. So today the focus would primarily be on the personal statement, as a lot of you guys are thinking about applying to med school. And the personal statement is really a place where you would need to spend the majority of your time. You don't get a lot of space. It's only about 5,300 characters, but you get to fit your entire life story and reason for becoming a medical doctor into such a short personal statement. And there are some critical things to think about when you're crafting the narrative. And the first thing I would say is this is your opportunity to share your story. Med schools are really interested in hearing more about who you are as a person, and they don't think of you as just a list of statistics or a list of experiences, right? So here's where you get to put together the pivotal experiences that have happened in your life and the challenges that you have faced. But you have to conglomerate all of these isolated or seemingly isolated experiences into a personal story that can connect at every single level. And what I find a lot of my students struggle with is really making that connection. You're essentially connecting the dots of a puzzle, and your experiences may not be entirely linear or entirely logical by any means, but working together with a coach could help you put together all your disparate experiences into a very coherent narrative that can build a story and argue for why you would be a good medical student. And the second thing to highlight would be your passion for medicine. And this should come at different points in your personal statement. And you wouldn't explicitly say, I'm really passionate about becoming a medical doctor because, right? So you wouldn't use explicit verbiage such as that in your personal statement, but instead you would show and demonstrate your passion for medicine through the experiences that you have gained, through the things that you have done. And this is not directly stated in the form of a single statement, but rather shown via distinct experiences that you could bring to table. And I find that that is very critical in making a good story for your narrative. The third point that we have over here is you want to demonstrate that you are really fit for becoming a medical doctor. And this is by demonstrating a dedication for lifelong learning. And we all know that med school journey is very long. So you have 4 years at least of medical school and at least 3 or if not 7 years of residency following medical school. And this is a pretty long path for many students who are pursuing this particular profession. And what you want to demonstrate in your personal statement and your narrative is you have thought deeply about whether or not this is the right path for you, and considering the challenges that such a long training path creates, and think more about, is this the right thing for me? And you want to be able to demonstrate that this indeed is the right career path for you. And the last point that is pretty critical is you want to show a vision for where you want to be in the future. Your personal statement is a place where you can demonstrate what your long-term goals are, in addition to explaining what your short-term goals are and why you're pursuing an MD degree. And it would be nice if you could tie in your long-term goals with some form of contribution to shaping the future of healthcare, which especially becomes a big point for top medical schools such as Stanford or Harvard, which not only aim to recruit the next generation of doctors, but they really aim to recruit the next generation of thought leaders and leaders who would go on to change the society in unimaginable ways. So these things are pretty critical to focus on while thinking about your personal statement. So, now that we spoke about what is important to highlight in a personal statement, what are some concrete steps that you could take to start thinking about writing a personal statement? So, I would say the first thing that I always ask all my students to do is sit down to think about the why, right? Why medicine? Why should you do an MD degree? And I think a lot of people do it for reasons that sometimes they may not have directly known, and sometimes it may be due to expectations from family or so many different factors could play a role in your why. So I think sitting down and asking yourself the why question and thinking deeply about why medicine would be the right path compared to everything else that you could do with your time could be very valuable as not just a reflective exercise, but also help you to hone down on how to craft your personal statement. And the second would be to focus mostly on what unique experiences that you have that would be different from somebody else. So it would be very cliche to say that perhaps you grew up in a community where medical care was not accessible. So we have so many people who have had similar experiences, but what would be more useful to say the same experience as would be if you highlighted perhaps a particular patient you work with in that community who didn't have access to medical care and how you worked with them to perhaps provide them some form of care or get them the right resources to proceed further. So, explaining in a very unique way how your experience is perhaps different from others would be pretty critical to building a strong narrative. And when people have failures, which literally everyone does, people who get into medical schools are not just out of the world humans. We all have failures. We all have the resilience to grow out of those failures. And med schools love to see that. Whenever you face failures, they would like to see some form of growth and some form of progress that you have made since the time of the failure. And the med school's personal statement is a place where you could highlight that. And finally, the goal is to show how all of the things that you have done connect you towards getting a medical degree and how that ties in with your long-term career plans. So thinking about all these factors in a concrete way would help you to get started with the personal statement. What I want to end with, considering the time that we have, I want to give enough time for questions. I want to talk about some of the major challenges that students have. So now that I spoke about what is important in a personal statement, the first main challenge that you have to overcome is the writer's block, which essentially means we all have things in our head, but we just can't put it to writing, right? We all know why we want to do medicine. You may know what pivotal experiences you want to highlight, but you're just simply not able to put that into writing. And this is something that I've helped students work directly one-on-one with, where you could brainstorm different ideas and put it into paper. And we have to realize that you need to begin somewhere. And that somewhere may not be the perfect place where you could be, but once you put things into writing and have a particularly strong rough draft, it's always pretty easy to go back to it and make improvements and make it suitable for a strong medical school personal statement. So I think beginning to write is one of the first and biggest advice I would give. However, the outcome of that writing would be, I would say just begin putting words to your thoughts, and then you could always rephrase it into something coherent. The second main point is again highlighting do not be too generic. Whenever you're explaining your experiences, you have to provide some amount of detail to make it personalized. So you shouldn't generally say, I worked with 10 homeless kids, perhaps. You want to say, who are those people? Where did you have this context? And what did you learn from that experience? And what were you able to contribute to them? And providing the details of the experience makes not only personalized experience, but it also provides you an opportunity to say how it plays a role in shaping you as a person and what was the learning that you got out of it. So I would avoid explaining your experiences in generic terms and rather focus more on the specific details. I think the third point is extremely important because people who apply to medical schools are extremely accomplished people and they have done a lot in their careers. They have a lot of awards. They have won really prestigious things. But what is really critical is to maintain a balance between humility and demonstrating that you have the right skill set to be able to be a successful medical doctor. And this again takes practice to develop. So working together could perhaps help strengthen that particular aspect. And the last point is very important because you only have 5,300 characters and you have to bring all these different elements within the word limit and still tell a story that is unique and strong and will make you stand out from the crowd of other medical school students who are other applicants who are also applying to get into medical school. So if you consider these different factors thoughtfully and be able to put together a personal statement, I think you are in a pretty good shape to make a strong case for why MD training would be good for you. And I want to end by giving a lot of time for questions. And here's the QR code if you wanted to work together on any aspect of your application. So I'm happy to take any questions. You can either put it on the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, I see there are things in the chat. So unless someone wanna unmute, I will go ahead and try answering questions from the chat. Okay. Okay, what made you want to do medicine after completing your PhD? Okay, that's a great question. So for my personal circumstance, I knew that I wanted to do MD and PhD degrees directly after completing my bachelor's. I did undergraduate research all 4 years of my undergrad at Kansas State, and I realized that I really love research, and I realized that I wanted to do drug development work at the forefront of converting drug development work into novel therapies that could be applied to the clinical side. The ordering was different for me because I wanted to do a PhD in a specific area called cryo-electron microscopy. So this is a technique that allows us to get structures of proteins. And this was developed at that time in Cambridge in the UK. And the timing was perfect because the person who got the Nobel Prize at that time was awarded the same year when I was applying, and I got an opportunity to go over there and learn the technique. So it just made more sense for me to do a PhD first, finish it, and then start the medical training. But there are so many different ways you can make MD and PhD work. So this was just one example of a pathway. All right. Kairos asking how to answer secondaries about why that school specifically. If I go based on the school's mission statement that everyone else is writing about, how do I make mine unique? That's a great question. Whenever you are applying to a particular school in the form of a secondary application, it's important to think about the school's mission. But the school's mission could be, for example, very generic, such as it could be either research driven or it could be serving a particular community. So let's take the example of serving a particular community. How can you make your statement different? And here's where you can talk about your personal experience. So different medical school applicants may have had different experiences and how they contributed to making a community better, and they are all not going to be the same. So I think the best way for a school's mission statement that says they care about community health and improving the health of the populations that are underserved, I would think more about what is it that you have done that aligns with the school's mission of serving the underserved, and think more about how you could highlight such an experience and reflect on why that was useful to you and how it played a role in influencing your thinking and why it changed you into the person that you are. So thinking about all these factors could help make your secondary statement unique, given that you're highlighting your experience. Okay. Um, There's another question about, is there such a thing as too much research experience? I have almost 6 years of research experience with my undergrad years and graduate years, but I still feel like that is not enough. Okay. I don't think there's any such thing as too much research experience. I would say, however much experience you have, it's only going to benefit you than hurt you. We have a lot of students, especially in our Stanford class. Many of them have done extensive amount of other work before they started medical school. So some people have done extensive, even decades of research and decades of other life experiences before they start medical school. So I don't think there's any bar as too much experience, but feeling that you have not done enough, it we need to dissect that a little bit more. So I would say you may have already done a lot, and it could be just your feeling that you have not done enough. So some people just have a constant feeling that however much they have done, they may compare themselves with someone else and may feel that they have not done to some somewhat of a same level. So I don't know what exactly is going on, but I would say, if you wanted to chat more, we could do that. But um, think more about why do you feel that particular way? Is it because you have no publications, or even if you didn't have publications, as long as you could get pretty strong letters of recommendation from your mentors saying that you have spent that much amount of time doing research, that could still be a valuable resource. And not everyone who gets into medical school have publications. So the feeling of not having done enough research could definitely be combated given that you have 6 years of research experience. Okay. So there's another question on how can we make our personal statement a flowing story if our experiences do not relate to each other? That's a great question. So when you have seemingly completely disconnected experiences, what I would like to do is I always ask my students to write out each of these experiences. So perhaps spend some time writing a paragraph about every single experience that you have had and try to find a common thread. For example, a student interested in psychiatry may perhaps have had research experience in mental health. They may have worked with communities with underserved or poor access to medical care in the mental health setting. And they may have had personal stories of friends or family members who may have had mental health crises. And they may all feel like completely different experiences, or they may have volunteered in a clinic that is related to neuroscience. And all these four different experiences that I highlighted may on paper seem completely different, but they all have a common thread of how they could be connected together. So I think the best way to combat a situation where you feel you have different experiences that do not directly relate to each other, the best option is to write them down, each experience in one paragraph, and try to find a common thread that could connect to your why medicine story. And that always provides you new and innovative ways of connecting all the different dots together. And again, it depends on everyone's circumstances. So we could work more on that if that be the case. Okay, as a non-traditional applicant that worked through school and is working full-time with primary experiences from projects during degree programs surrounding health disparities and minimal volunteering and shadowing, but a strong understanding of why I want to pursue an MD, how can I leverage my experiences to still be taken seriously as an applicant? Okay, that's a great question. I feel that non-traditional applicants always have so much cool experience that perhaps someone coming directly from undergrad wouldn't have. And I think what would be great in those circumstances is to really focus on your strengths, which is the additional experiences that you've had. So, for example, in this case, you say that you have experience working full time. Um, with projects related to your degree in health disparities. And this could be related to your mission for why you wanted to become a medical doctor. And all of this could add value to perhaps the type of career that you want to pursue. And even if you had minimal volunteering or shadowing, the first objective would be either you could try to increase the number of volunteer hours if that be the case. Otherwise, I would say, given that you have substantial research experience in health disparities, you could focus your application on why you want to focus further on an MD degree, given that you are interested in health disparities research. So there are a lot of medical doctors who do extensive research in health disparities, and you could make your application focused just towards that particular career path of becoming a health disparities scientist and a medical doctor. And for such a person, perhaps your volunteering or shadowing hours may not matter as much because you're communicating a clear goal of what you want to become. So again, it's based on a case by case situation. Okay, I see there are a lot of questions, so I'm going to read out the ones that have upvotes. So there's a question about, is it okay to write about health challenges that you have faced in your personal statement? Would talking about health struggles make you seem like a bad candidate or a liability? I would say definitely not. We have a lot of students who have faced a range of health challenges, ranging all the way from physical to intellectual health challenges. And we have had successfully matriculated students with all such challenges. And I would say definitely don't feel bad about talking about them, given that they may have played a substantial role in who you are as a person. And I don't believe med schools treat you as a liability by any means. If anything, your disability, and if you have manage to overcome that and still achieve things in life is going to only add value to you as an applicant. So I would say as long as you feel comfortable talking and sharing about it, definitely go for it. And I don't believe it will be considered as a negative by any means. Okay. There's another upvoted question about, do you think it is better to start with a hook and then go through experiences or write about your experiences chronologically? If it would be better to start with the hook, how do you transfer smoothly into experiences earlier on that answer why medicine? Okay, that's a great question. I have seen students take different approaches with regards to that. I would personally prefer to start with the hook just to get your audience interested, to learn more about who you are as a person. But you could start with the hook and then still continue chronologically. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive. It really depends on the story that you're trying to say. So a hook statement is really aimed at gaining the attention, but once you have gained the attention, you could then go back to different experiences that you have had in a chronological way. But with that said, you don't always have to have a chronological order. So I've seen personal statements, successful personal statements that just explained two or three main experiences they have had and by no chronological order. So it's just a description of the main experiences that shaped their journey into medicine, and that's still okay. So this goes to say that personal statement is actually, by the word personal, it's very, very personal. So everyone takes different stance on how they want to organize it, and there is no one particular scheme that you could follow to be successful. So there's a question about, is it true that it's good to show accomplishments outside of pre-med activities, and how would you do that given you only have 15 experiences? That is also an important thing to think about. You could definitely share accomplishments outside of your pre-med work, given that they show who you are as a person. And med school is recruiting candidates who have diverse experiences and not just medically related experiences. And where you would fit that would really depend on what other things you're trying to highlight. So we need to look at what other 14 experiences you're thinking of highlighting, and I believe there's definitely enough space to include all of your experiences. So we just need to see your other experiences and see where this would fit the best. All right. I think we have to wrap up given that we only have 1 minute and there is a next session happening. So if you have further questions, please feel free to get in touch. You can find my profile using the QR code. And I know there is supposed to be a winner, which is on the chat. So I'll let Amanda take over. Thank you so much for your time.